What's shaking? Hey, it's Rick Jordan, and today we're going all in. My guest today is I'm pumped about this because he's a CEO, right? Like me, obviously, but a best-selling author and executive coach, a Forbes columnist, and founder of Accountability Inc. You know, it's all these things that the dude just has an amazing company that's out there, CEO Accountability, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Rhett Power, what's shaking, my man?
Hey, brother. Rick, it's great to be on, man. It's sounds like we're both on the road this week, but doing our thing. But I'm glad to be with you. That's
what we do, right? And it's right. I think about this because I'm excited to hear what you have to say about CEO accountability. But it's an interesting concept to me because I mean, even with this show right now, like you said, we're just traveling, but yet we're still sticking to our schedules. And I'm sure there's way more insight than you have to accountability than just that. But we do what we need to do wherever we need to get it done.
Amen to that. I mean, that's our job, right? Our job is to get it done, and and it's tough sometimes. Sometimes you make sacrifices. I know you've been there, right? You've made those sacrifices. We all do, but that's what we're here for. I mean, I think accountability is often a scary word, right? It's something that we feel like means that we've done something wrong. And my whole mission is to sort of change that around, right? And say, look, accountability is a value. It's not about doing right or wrong. And it's not about just being held accountable for results. It's really your whole ethos, man. I live in this world where I think, I feel accountable not only to the results, but I feel accountable to the people. I feel accountable to the customer. I feel accountable to the product that we put out there. And to me, it's more of a value than anything, than just a word that's sort of a scary word that people, use when something goes wrong.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, as you're talking through a lot of that too, there's a lot that resonates with me on that. I do these CEO talks every Monday morning with my entire company because we have different offices, right? Different physical offices across the US.
Right.
And that was one way for me to be like, because I hold myself accountability to the company's culture, to my company's culture. And
right.
There's no other person that can actually instill that, I believe, than the CEO. Other people can get on board and can drink the Kool-Aid, if you want to call it that, and be sort of like ambassadors for the culture within the company. But the only one who sets that is the CEO. And I was talking this Monday about Tim Grover. I'm sure you know who that dude is. And he was talking about Michael Jordan and how you mentioned the sacrifices. And what he was saying really hit home because it's like Michael had games to play on Sundays. Michael had games to play on Christmas Day when he couldn't play Santa Claus. And when it comes to that, I mean, that dude, Michael was the CEO of the Bulls, man. Yeah. No joke. It's like whatever he needs to do to get it done is what he did.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, you're right. Like, so if you don't set the tone, right? If you don't set the course and the tone and the culture, somebody else in the organization is going to set it. And it may not be what you want it to be, right? Because, all of our organizations have influencers. All of our organizations have people who are leaders, maybe not in title, but lead, right? They're looked at as influencers and people that are important. But if we don't set that tone, if we as founders and CEOs don't set that tone and that culture, somebody else is going to set it for us. And it's probably not the one that we're going to want.
Typically, I see that with acquisitions, right? Yeah.
That's sort of a cliche, I know, but it's so true.
It is. It absolutely is. And can you describe a time for me? Because I know looking deep inside myself, I know there was times to where, if I'm being vulnerable, I neglected that role, right? Neglected that accountability to the culture and just allowed people within my company or companies to set that for me. Right. And it wasn't mine. And then I had to push a reset button. Have you been through a similar scenario at all?
I'll actually tell you one that's actually more important than just what happened with my company. I remember when I started when I co-founded the toy company with Pete, we I was all in, and we both were all in.
Yeah.
We put everything into it. We were living out of the van. We were delivering product all over the place. We were, hustling. And one of the things that I forgot and I sort of lost sight of was the family side.
Mm.
And so I didn't lose sight of the business culture, but I certainly lost sight of the family side and the family culture and and what not being present when I should be, what that was doing. I was missing stuff that I shouldn't be missing. So I didn't have that. I hate the word business, work-life balance.
Me too, man.
but I certainly didn't. I certainly wasn't doing enough on that side. And so absolutely. I mean, and it took business partners and my wife at the time, and the family to say, time out. You gotta make some different choices. And actually, what really happened after that, which I thought was, I look back on quite often and think it's kind of remarkable. When we sort of did our big reset a couple of years in and actually started taking some time off and started leaving the office before midnight,
That happens for a CEO.
We got better. Our business got better. We got smarter. We got better. We got, there was more harmony in what we were doing, and we found our way better. And I think, and I don't know why, but, when we rebooted and we sort of re-looked at everything and we sort of reset, we hit that reset button, things got better. And so, I think that was probably as a result of spending more time with the kids and the family and, taking a little bit of time off and then being able to come back and actually make better decisions and better, calls for the business. And so, but yeah, no, it's easy to lose sight. And particularly if you're like us, like CEOs are driven people. We're driven people, right? We're uber focused on the work and on making things work. And, I think it's very easy to lose sight of some of those things that are so important, like the family and also the culture, right? Also some of those things that you like, the culture of the business, I think is easy to lose sight of.
How did you finally concede? When people, it sounds like maybe your spouse was telling you, "Hey, I think you need to make some better choices here for the family." How did you finally give in to that?
I think it was probably an ultimatum of some sort. I don't know. You've got to. It's not. I don't think it was an either or, but I think it was. Look, man, this isn't working for me. And you learn if you value something. And I not that I didn't value them. I didn't value the family. I just think I was probably taking it for granted, maybe, or. Knew it was there and knew they were there to be, and they were very supportive, and just sort of took advantage of that maybe, or lost sight of that. And I think that those words probably yanked me back to some reality. And the other thing that my partner and I did was we also started to hold each other accountable. And that's, again, I think that's another reason why the business started really working for us. Is we started putting an accountability structure in place where we forced each other on weekends to at least every other weekend to take that weekend off, right? We've started forcing hey, the work is going to be there tomorrow. Let's leave right now, right? Let's cut off today. Leave that laptop on the desk, and so I think that sort of helped as well. But I think it all sort of came to a head, and then it was either we were going to need to do something completely different and go back to work doing what we were doing before, with jobs, or hey, we've got to recalibrate this. And I think it was sort of a consciousness on the family side, both of our families, and the two of us, where we were just getting worn out and burned out, and that wasn't going to help anybody. So I think it sort of all came to a head at that period of time. And I think, it took people from the outside to sort of yank you back. It took somebody, and that's the good thing about having people in your life that can do that for you, right? That know you well enough and that have enough influence on you to say, hey, you need to fix that, right? And you listen to those people.
For sure. It's what you're saying today is resonating because I just think of literally where I'm at right now, right? I'm in a JW Marriott in Orlando. We're recording the show, right? It's top 2% in the world show.
Right.
And the reason I'm here is that it sounds counterintuitive to hustle culture, right? And it's exactly what you're saying because there's so much right now, like in my cybersecurity company, that is sort of chaotic. It's almost like a reset button from an acquisition that I'm pressing, and looking at budgets and layoffs and all of this. As we streamline, I mean, it's almost like what Elon did when he took over Twitter. It's a similar scenario. I'd rather do more with the same amount of people than keep the same amount of people and do less. But then sometimes with acquisitions, it's just how it is, so things just happen the way they happen. And in the midst of all of this stuff that's going on, I'm taking a week and saying, you know what, I'm checking out at like 1 o'clock every day for a week straight. I'm gonna check in the mornings. You and I are recording a show. I'm checking in with my key people, getting some work done, continuing to move business forward. But then it's not staying till midnight. So the counterintuitive part, bro, is just that it's like I'm saying we're super busy. We have a ton going on. I'm going to take some time off.
Yeah,
but it's helping, dude. It's totally helping me.
And then doesn't it help you zero in and focus more? I mean, I think that's the remarkable part. I mean, I see how you're lighting up, and it's like that's true. I think you're better when you have that sort of set time, right? And you take that time. I mean, I think it makes you sharper. I don't know why, but it does.
Same. My kids are helping keep me accountable to this too. It's pretty awesome because I mean, we talked just a little before the show. It's like they love Universal. So it's like, hey, Dad, when are we going to go today? When are we going to head out there today? I'm like, all right, it's time to close the MacBook. This is the reason why we're here.
That's right.
I love it, bud.
And it's not easy to do. It's hard, but I think once you do it, I got to tell you the story. So I've got this guy I work with as a coach. I coach him, and he does something that's just really remarkable. He works from home, and then he's got three small children. And what he does is he has his work clothes, and so he gets dressed every morning in his work clothes, and so the kids know. Like when dad's in when he's in his work clothes, that he's not off limits, but not to bust in the door and disturb. And then he comes out at 5 and he puts on the dad clothes or the play clothes, so to speak. And that means dad is open for business and, is there to help with homework and play and go out and shoot basketball and do things. And so I just love the sort of how he sort of just switches, turns that switch off, puts on the play clothes, and the kids know it's time. That's their time, right?
That's really cool. I heard a story. It was a Navy SEAL who's a friend of mine who would do this with his wife, and he would do hats, like baseball hats, cool. And one would say CEO because they worked together also, but it was the same thing. He had two little kids, but it's like when he would talk, so people would understand, especially his wife would understand what mode he was in at any given moment. Because it's a thing. I mean, I see this too, as a CEO, right? I see this. It's hard sometimes to shift on a dime, the tone of your conversation.
Yeah.
So more softer and more personal versus hardcore CEO. It's a different shift. So he would utilize different hats. Awesome. One would say CEO, but then he put another hat on. I don't know what the other hat on that said, partner or let's get it on or whatever. He would use physical baseball hats to help with that.
I could go with that. I like that.
Yeah, no joke. Did this shift happen? Because I love how you're talking about this point in your life, because it's like, and I love dynamic shifts in anyone's life. I get excited over them because it's like everything that happened prior almost doesn't apply anymore, because you've actually truly made the decision. It isn't like you're trying to do something, or what, at least I found this with me. It's like everything that happened prior, it's history, it's past, it's not anchoring me anymore, because as of today, I've made a decision. And it's like, when I know these types of decisions in my life, they're going to be 100% different, a complete 180 going forward. Did that happen with you in the toy company? Did you see things start to take off when you made that shift? Is there a correlation there?
Oh, it's definitely a correlation, and I totally give that period. When we made the changes, and what also happened at the same time was we realized we needed to stop. And again, this is a cliche, but we needed to get off the truck and start working in the business, and not working on the business, but working in the business. Or I'm sorry, working on the business, not working in the business. And that was so true. And that was when we sort of made this big shift to stay put, stay in the office, stay focused on the client, the product, and not going out there and doing all the things that we could actually hire somebody to do. And that we needed to hire somebody to do. And we needed to take that next step and that risk to bring other people on to sort of take on some of these jobs that we had learned how to do. I knew how to do it. So did I need to do it anymore was the question I needed to ask myself, when I needed to be more strategic, because it was a terrible business model, and we had to change that business model. And unless we had time to do it and think about it strategically and then be able to make that pivot, if we kept doing, we're never going to have time to make that pivot. And that all sort of was around the same time when we decided we can't be gone all the time. We can't, when we do come back to the office, we can't be back. We can't be in there at the warehouse for, until midnight or 2:00 in the morning every day. And so it helped us actually make some of those key decisions. When we stopped running all the time, we were able to make key decisions that I think transformed the business. So I think absolutely it was a big shift. And talking about big shifts, I think is an interesting thing. And there's sort of those big moments where you have big change. And one of the things I like to talk about often on interviews, but often in talks, is like listening to your gut. And I don't know where you want to take this today, but I've defined, I think, a lot of my life by listening to my gut feeling and what my gut's telling me. And like, I've had done lots of different things career-wise, everything from, foreign service to running a toy company to running a coaching company now. And all of those sort of big changes, going into Peace Corps when I was 28, all those big changes in my life, if I hadn't listened to my gut say, it's time to do something different, it's time to make a big change, those are the times I think I would have sort of gotten myself in trouble. Not in trouble, but I think I would have been unhappy. If I hadn't, pushed myself to say, follow what my brain and my heart was telling me to do, and just been complacent or not taking that risk. I think life would have been a lot different.
And you touched on something about being unhappy. And I've noticed that anyone in this wide world can do things that they're really, really good at as a career, as a business, and still be the most unhappy individual ever.
Yeah.
And it's because of what we're talking about today, about having that. It's like a separation cohesiveness.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting.
It's such a almost like an oxymoronic phrase, but that's what I see this as. And I'm going through a lot of the same things. So, I mean, the timing of you and I talking, and putting this out to the world could not have been better, because I'm going through some of the similar scenarios right now that you've been through, and it's hitting home. It's like, I know that everything from this point forward, because when I looked in, it's like, there's a lot of things and that I was just unhappy with. And a lot of it had to do with really letting go of my own accountability to myself, to my vision, to my dreams, to how I needed to push things, and still being compassionate to other people in the process, because I love that, and not to get into the cliche about people pleasing. It's just the compassion side of things is always going to be there. And I've learned this, just over the past couple of months, is that the compassion for others that are in and around my circle, whether it's a coaching client, whether it's employees in my cybersecurity company, whether it's podcast guests, whether it's people I'm just talking to from stage, or even out to millions at a time doing mass nationwide media, the compassion is always there. But the compassion is about their situation and maybe their choices, because it has nothing to do with how it affects me and how it affects my dream. When I allow that to do that, then I let go of the accountability I have to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been the lesson that I've learned over the past 3 months, man, is just getting into that perspective of like, I love you, I care about you. At the same time, the choices that are being made are not the best choices, and they're being made by you, which means in order for me to protect my vision, in order for me to protect my dreams, there's decisions that I have to make that you might not like.
Yep.
But without them, I'm not being accountable and true to myself.
That's right.
That's the tough part as a CEO, brother. It really is.
Yeah, a lot of times, and I don't know the situation, and I'd love to talk about it if you want to dig into it. I know those situations, and a lot of times for us, it was people who were with us from the beginning, early on, and who meant a lot personally. And it didn't do us any favor culturally. It didn't do us any favors in the long run to when they couldn't grow with us, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's what you're talking about, if that's the situation you're in, but that's tough. I mean, but you're right. At the end of the day, you've got to honor the vision that you've set out for the company, and it's not honoring it if you're not making some of those tough decisions sometimes, particularly around people. It's tough.
I liken it the same, man, to no joke, like the same as choosing to work out 4 times a week as I do.
Mm-hmm.
Same type of accountability, because I mean, that's the theme of the conversation today. Your accountability to your vision is the same accountability that, so if you can do that, if you can tie it back to something else in your life to where it's like, I'm hardcore accountable to myself with this. And then you can take it, to working out. I mean, that's one of the things that I love doing. I love staying fit. I love staying healthy. Anybody who sees me, even when I go on like Newsmax, like, God, Rick's really buff. I got that feedback, and I was like, I actually don't do it that was just like a natural side effect, but I do it because I feel good, because I'm healthy. That's it. And then it's nice to look in the mirror. I won't deny that. But at the same time, when I'm not accountable to myself that way, and there's been times, because even though it's been consistency over and over and over again, there's times to where, like I've had a surgery that threw me off course for like 6 weeks, and then it was difficult to get back into it because you lose that accountability. It's the same thing as when you're a CEO with your accountability to your own vision, is to where you start to entertain other things that are counterproductive to your vision for that same 6 weeks. It's like you allowed some external thing to come inside you, similar to like a surgery, right? And then that just derails your accountability to yourself in those moments. And then it takes a little bit of time. So I hope that people listening to us today can have a little compassion for themselves, because when you lose that accountability to yourself, it does take a little bit of time to get that back on track. It's not right away, or not a long time. It's not an overnight thing, and it's not like a 2-year thing, but it could be like a couple of weeks.
Oh, look, I mean, how many businesses fail because this is where the CEO loses loses it, right? So like I've got the worst case of ADD in the world. And so for me, like staying accountable to, the business and the focus and my health and all the things, the family, right, is something I have to really, really fight to do. How many of us get so distracted by the bright, shiny objects as the CEO, right? The newest thing that
every damn day, man.
Right. And so, yeah. Right. And so what you're saying is absolutely spot on because, and I think that's where we get caught up and a lot of businesses sort of end up failing and missing it is because we don't stay accountable. We don't stay focused on what the business is, the product, yeah. the culture, the team, and the customer. And so I think what you just said is really spot on. And that's in those cases where people just sort of lose accountability to all of it and get distracted by all the stuff and lose sight of a lot of the key things that we have to pay attention to, right, every day.
Yeah.
Where the business is running.
For sure. You mentioned your coaching business a little bit, and I know that's been going for many years at this point, right?
Yeah.
How did you jump into that? How are you like, hey, I'm going to go help people now after I built these amazing companies? I think I can do the same for others.
It was really random.
It is that way, isn't it? That's why I was asking, brother.
It's so random. I mean, I was on stage. I was out in San Francisco at a conference, and I think I was sitting with Marshall Goldsmith, and might have been an Inc. conference or something. Anyway, we started talking, and went to dinner. And next thing I know, I'd opened a coaching business, and the reason why is, and I'll tell you the why I wanted to do it. So when I was in Peace Corps, I was teaching in Uzbekistan. I was teaching like current events and marketing, and I was teaching and at the college level, and I mean it was the best 2 years that I ever had. And I remember thinking, you know what, if I can see that spark in people's eyes that I saw in those kids' eyes, if I can do that, that's something I want to do for a career. And the conversation I had with Marshall and then a guy named Mark Thompson, who's one of the top CEO coaches in the world, who became sort of a mentor. And I said, if I could do that for people and give them that spark and give them, just that little push, that little bit of help that gets them to where they want to be, then that's what I want to do. That sounds like, but I never had a coach. I'd never had a coach in business. I wish I had. I mean, I'd have made a whole heck of a lot fewer mistakes. I'd have been a whole lot faster at growing the companies. I mean, I'd have been a lot better as a CEO, probably a lot more mature and a lot more focused and a lot more. But, that's neither here nor there now. But, I figured, okay, if I can do that, then that's a heck of a way to work and live and to get to help people. And that's sort of how that started. And it, it's a journey of learning. It's a journey of figuring out a whole new business and how to make money, how to make a profit at it and how to, what was the business model, what's the methodology and all that. That certainly was a process. And what can I specifically help people with? What is my core competency there? What is the thing I can really do well that's going to help people? And so, that took a bit to figure out. And that's where the accountability focus really came in. And because I know that the difference that's played in my life, when I've held myself accountable and I've had a good accountability system, then I've been successful. When I haven't, not so much. So, I knew that's where I wanted to go with it.
That's awesome. I love the randomness of it too. I share a similar because mine's just about to launch, right? And I always love helping people. And I'd be at events and I'd see friends there, like big time speakers, and people like David Meltzer and his team, and they take a look around. And he's an awesome guy. Yeah, he and I met probably just about a year ago now, and we've done a lot since. It was just like kindred spirits, as I'm sure you had a similar experience. And when we were on the show last week, the playbook.
Yeah, I was on the show last week.
That's awesome. He's an awesome dude. So as I was talking with him and his team, and it was similar scenario, it was like, show me your DMs. So I'm showing him my DMs, and it's like, dude, there's all these people that want to talk to you, that want help from you, that are in business. It's like, you need to coach. It's like, I know you've got the public company you're building and everything, but people are literally asking to be coached by you. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm a coach now,
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, when you have people asking for that help, I mean, you gotta do it. You gotta figure it out.
It's a cool scenario.
Something in you that they want. Yeah,
right on. And it's complete contrast to how you see a lot of the coaches, and I'm doing air quotes, for everybody who's listening on iTunes and Spotify right now, for all the coaches in air quotes that are around and be like, I'm going to be a business coach, and they're 19 years old, and just graduated high school or whatever, they just got done working at McDonald's a little bit ago. And not saying that those individuals have nothing to offer, because I believe that they do. I think there's always value in anybody who's really one generation beyond where you're at. And so they could, but not so much the scenarios that we were in, you know what I mean? Because it's the wheat gets separated from the chaff pretty quickly when it comes to that. And that's a biblical phrase too. And it's very, very true, man. And that's the thing. It's like, if you're being asked to do something, it's way better than you trying to seek it out. That's one of the lessons that I learned around that.
Yeah. Oh, amen to that, man. That's, I built the business before I had that audience, and it, now it's a different scenario. I'm more in the boat that you're in, but boy, is that harder. It really is.
It is trying to build it from the ground up versus people just naturally gravitating towards you and the right people coming towards you for those scenarios.
Yeah. And, 10 years ago, coaching wasn't in the vernacular either.
True.
I mean, if you think about it, it's a relatively, it's been accepted for a while, but there's a lot more acceptance around it. I mean, that's why you see the evolution of Better Up and some of these other, coaching online, even online coaching kind of things. I mean, I think boards and C-suite, executives are now, it's not such a dirty, a lot of my early clients were boards of directors coming and saying, we've got a CEO, we really like him, but he's got some problems. He's got some behavior issues we need to fix. And it's like, okay, well, I think we've gone way beyond that now. And this is my point. That I think now it's based on, hey, we want to up the performance. Like, performance is good, attitude is good, things are good. That's a great time to coach and actually get even better. Right.
For sure. The other thing that I really enjoy about this too is because as we're talking, because we mentioned David Meltzer, he is a very lucrative and successful coaching business too. And it's awesome because as you and I talk, and this I think is also what will separate, because I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience that are listening to the show. A lot that are even looking to start a business at some point. That's a lot of the demographic that listens to All In. That saying, I really want to do that. I really have this core of me that's an entrepreneur, but I'm working my job right now. I'm 20, 21 years old, something like that. That's the largest demographic that we're talking to. And when you're looking, if it's not me, right? Or Rhett, if it's not you, if it's not David, I encourage everybody to look for somebody that's like us in the mindset that we have, to where we're not out there trying to go after the market share of a different coach. Right. We're not out there competing with some of the other coaches because, dude, there's people that know way. I took a company public, right? I mean, that's a pretty big thing. You know, you had a super successful toy company and a whole bunch of other things that you've done. It's a big thing. You know, David, God, you look at all of his accolades, right? He's done 80,000 big things, you know, and there's still somebody that we can always find, you, me, him, that we can always find that knows more than us in some area.
Every day, finally. Yeah. I see that every day.
Absolutely. I mean,
even when I'm not looking for it, I see it. I mean, absolutely.
I know. So when you're looking for a coach, don't look for the ones that are putting down the others. Don't look for the ones that are competing against others to try to gain their audience or, you know, to pillage their plunder, so to speak. It's right. Find the right match for you, especially when somebody's willing, like you and I are, Rhett, to be like, I might not be the best person for you. You know, there could be somebody else that has more knowledge in this particular area that could really help you accelerate faster than I ever could.
Oh, 100%, man. I don't, I can't coach everybody, you know, and so much of it is personality match. So much of it is skill set to what they want to do. Right. So much of that. I mean, I totally buy what you're saying because I can't coach everybody, and I don't have the skill set to coach everybody, and I'm not a match personality wise for everybody. And I think that stuff's important when you're talking to somebody. You know, it reminds me what you're saying is, you know, we did have a couple mentors early on in the toy business, and what we realized about, you know, a year in was their thinking was much smaller than ours, and so their advice was counterproductive for us. I mean, what they were saying to us was small thinking, and we were thinking probably way too big, but we had a dream, we had a vision, and that's what we were going to do, you know, no matter what. And so there was just we weren't synced up in what we were going to be able to get from them and what we were looking for from them. And so I think that's really important what you're saying. It's really critical.
No doubt. Even if what you're saying, man, and this is probably a great place to bookend this today, is where you start to find that personality match. Because if you're looking for somebody to hold you accountable, but instead it feels more so like they're actually pulling you back, there's a difference between accountability and somebody holding you back. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, to your point, you know, with Dave, right? It's again, we're full of cliches today, but it's like the network, the people that you surround yourself with, right? I want to surround myself with the Daves of the world, you know, with the Rick Jordan of the world, because I learn from you guys. You're inspiring in what you're doing, and so that pushes me harder. It pushes me to be better, and see, that's what I need out of. I don't need much from Dave except his energy, enthusiasm, and his love, and his his support, and I get more out of that than a contact or a whatever. But I mean, you know what I mean? So it's really important to surround yourself with people that are going to make you be better and push you to follow those dreams and to go after what you want. So I know people talk about networks, you know, really important, and it really is. It's just critical.
A board member of mine says your network is your net worth. And we might just title this episode "All the Cliches." It's a great place, man. Rhett, brother, thank you for being on, man. This was fun.
You're welcome, man. Have fun in Orlando with the kids, and we'll talk soon.
Sweet.